Hey everybody, Mr. Macintosh here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to downgrade macOS versions on your new Apple Silicon Mac. Let's say you're running macOS Big Sur 11.2 and you just upgraded to it and you're having a problem with an application and you need to go back to 11.1. Well, guess what? It's definitely not as easy as it was on Intel Macs. We've got a couple hurdles that we're going to have to go through. You can see on this screen, this copy of macOS Big Sur application is too old to be open on this version of macOS. I'm going to go over all about it and show you how to downgrade from the version that you're on down here to a previous version. Let's jump in and get started. If you had a previous Intel Mac, it was pretty cut and dry on how to downgrade the version of Mac operating system that you were on. All you needed was a USB flash drive or hard drive, and you could boot to the installer media of whatever version that you had all the way back to the version that your Mac was shipped to from the factory. For example, on this 16-inch MacBook Pro, it's got Big Sur on it, but you could go all the way back to Catalina because that's the version this was shipped with. So all I would need to do is go into macOS Recovery, modify the startup options so I can boot to external media, and I could boot to this installer, and I can install macOS Catalina back on this Mac. And the same thing goes if I wanted to go back to a previous version of macOS Big Sur. For example, if 11.2 is on here and I want to go back to 11.1, no big deal. I just needed 11.1 create and install media version on the USB hard drive. Make sure I modify the external boot media protection, boot to the 11.1 installer, erase the drive, and I'm downgraded. But that's not the case with Apple Silicon. As you can see with this message, I've got 11.1 on here, and I attempted to start the installer application 11.01 to downgrade. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck are you talking about? Well, the problem is with Apple Silicon, previously on Intel Macs, if you use a create install media USB drive and boot it to it, you're actually booting to the version of macOS that is on the create and install media that you made. So again, if you're on 11.1 and you created 11.0.1 previous version, you're booting to that version on Intel. And you just click install and you're off to the races. On Apple Silicon, it's totally different. You are booting to macOS Recovery, and then you're running the installer application version that's on your create install media drive. So if this Mac Mini is running 11.2 and you need to get it back to 11.1 and you try to run that installer, this is the message that you're going to get. And there's no way around this. You're not going to be able to downgrade the version of macOS this way. And that's going to be even in the future. For example, this Mac Mini here came with Big Sur from the factory. When a 12 point whatever comes out, the same thing's going to happen. The only way you're going to be able to downgrade is to use Apple Configurator 2 with a second Mac. That's it. That's your only option. We'll hit quit on here and I'll show you what that means, and we can prove it. So again, this is macOS Recovery 11.1. So we can go into Utilities, go to the terminal, and I'll make it a little bigger so you can see this here. We'll go SW version, and this is 11.1. I used 11.01 install media to boot to this, and that's why we got that message. So let's look at the volumes. ls volumes, and you'll be able to see that I got multiple versions of macOS installer on this USB. So this is the one I booted to. I booted to 11.01 20B50, and that's the message that I got. There's no way around this. We cannot downgrade to anything lower that's what's currently installed on this Apple Silicon Mac. So let's look at that in the startup security utility real quick so we can look at those options. If we look at the iOS devices like iPad and iPhone, you know that they sign their operating systems, and the same might be true for macOS in the future. They haven't done this yet, but they might. And what I mean by that is, for example, 11.1 is out right now, but they might say in 2 weeks after the OS has been out there that they're not going to sign 11.01, the previous version, anymore. And you won't be able to install it. Except the difference between Apple Silicon Macs and iOS devices is that we have the option. Apple has given us the option to downgrade. So let's look at that. We have the Macintosh hard drive that's booted to, and you can see 11.1 is on here. We'll go to the security policy. And notice how full security is enabled. Full security ensures that your current OS or signed, and look at how it says signed, so that's like a precursor to the future, operating system software currently trusted by Apple can run. This mode requires a network connection at software installation time. And that's what I mentioned in the previous video that talked about installing macOS Big Sur on the Apple Silicon Mini, that you need an internet connection to be able to say to Apple to personalize macOS install. And that's what that's talking about. Now, we've got reduced security. And this is what's allowing institutions like businesses or schools or whatever, even Apple has actually said hobbyist, a Mac collector that will in the future want to be able to install a previous version of macOS, or someone who wants to tinker with the operating system and do different things with older versions. They allow us to do that with reduced security. So even if Apple stops signing a previous version of macOS, we are still going to be able to go in here, and then this allows any version signed operating system software ever trusted. Now that's the caveat, ever trusted by Apple to run. So technically, as long as Apple signed it at one time, that will allow us to reinstall it on this Mac as long as we have reduced security enabled on here. Now keep in mind, you need to have a owner of the device or an administrator that was created through the setup assistant to be able to select this. So I'll show you what that looks like. Right now, I just reinstalled macOS on here. There is no user on the system, so I'll show you what that looks like. But before I do, this is the other option. You can allow user management of kernel extensions from identified developers. That means that you can still install an application with a kernel extension as long as you click your reduce security and you select this checkmark box here. Now you can install, I don't recommend it, but if you need to do it, the option is here and Apple's given it to you. And then the second option here is allow remote management of kernel extensions and automatic software updates. And that allows remote management of an MDM like Jamf Pro for businesses to be able to manage kernel extensions and automatic software updates. So we'll just remove those for now and then click OK, and I'll show you what that means. And look, see, recovery is trying to change the system settings, but no administrator is found. So that's why I wanted to show you this. You need to have an owner that is an administrator to be able to change these settings. So we'll click OK and we'll click on cancel here. And we'll exit the startup utility. But that's why I wanted to show you this, because this is critical for the future. So if Apple does stop signing, you will have to go in there and modify that to be able to do the next process that we're going to do here next. So now that we know that it's impossible to downgrade from a newer version of macOS in macOS recovery or even using an installed media, we have to rely on Apple Configurator 2 in a second Mac. So we'll shut this Mac down and we'll boot it to Dfu Mode, and I'll show you how we can downgrade here. Okay, so now we got to get the Mac Mini into Dfu Mode to prepare it for Apple Configurator 2. So all we need to do is we'll lift this up here like this, and this is the best way to do it. And notice how I'm using the charge cable from a MacBook Pro charger. Now, if you have a Mac Mini, you're not going to have this. But guess what? If you have a MacBook Pro that you need to do the Apple Configurator 2 from, you're probably going to have that charge cable, so that's all you need. Now, notice the placing of the USB-C cable here. It needs to be the closest to the Ethernet port, not the one next to the HDMI like the previous T2 Mac Minis to restore BridgeOS. So Apple did switch it from here to here on Apple Silicon. So once you got it plugged into here, it doesn't matter which plug that you use for the host Mac. It's just a target Mac that you need to have it plugged in. So once you have that, now we got the way to get it into Dfmu mode is we have to unplug the power cable. We're going to hold down the power button for 1 second, plug in the power cable, and then hopefully we will see Dfu Mode. And that's why we want to have Apple Configurator 2 open, so we'll know exactly when this is in Dfu Mode. And it might not work. And as you know, if you watched my previous video on how to get the Apple Silicon Macs to Dfu Mode, it's a crazy process that takes a couple attempts to get it going with multiple different keyboard commands and counting to 17 and all this stuff. So this is a lot easier, but it can still be a little bit goofy because if you press the power button a little bit too early, or if you put the power button or you plug in the power cable and before you hold down the power, it's not going to work. And the way you'll know is it'll immediately boot up and you'll see it trying to get into macOS recovery or the boot picker menu. So let's jump in and get started. So the best way to do it is to put the Mac like this and then get the power cable ready to go. Don't plug it in yet. Hold down the power button for 1 second and immediately plug it in. And then hopefully within 1 to 3 seconds, we'll see Dfu Mode. So let's try, see if we can get it on the first time here. Ready? 1 second, go. Hold it down. And it worked. Great. So now that that's working and it worked so easy, let's see what it looks like if it didn't work. And because you're going to probably have troubleshooting when this happens. It's probably not going to work the first couple times. So let's try to hold it down even longer. We'll try to hold down for 3 seconds and then plug it in and see if it works. And look, it's not even working. It's not even turning on. So this is kind of like a sit. So I'll let go and nothing happened. So then you try again. And if we try it again like this, and let's try to put it in and then hold down the power button like this, and it might work and might not. We'll see what happens. And that's when you know it didn't work. If you hear power up and you see this, you know it didn't work. So there's 2 failed attempts just with a little bit of a different startup sequence, even though it seems super simple. So we're going to unplug again. And we're going to try to get it. Now, the other thing I noticed with testing this out multiple times is that you don't want to keep trying. If you're having trouble like this, you keep trying to plug it in and try, let it be disconnected to let the power drain out of the Mac Mini because there's a little bit of power in the power supply for a couple seconds after you unplug it. Let it sit for maybe 10 seconds to let all the power drain out, then try the process again. So now that we've waited a couple seconds, we're ready to try again. We'll go, like I said, we'll get it in position. And then we'll hold it around for 1 second and immediately plug it in the cable. Ready? 1, plug it in. See if we can got it. It's looking good, I think. Yep, we got it. Great. So now we're ready to go. I'll put this here and we'll get started. So now we know that and then the other thing is that you'll notice that a way to tell also if you don't have Apple Configurator 2 up, you can still put in a Dfmu mode because you'll see the amber light go on. And that's a way that you can confirm that the Mac Mini and probably the Mac Pro in the future, the iMac doesn't have a LED, that you'll be able to tell that it's in Dfu mode in the future. Now, there's one more thing we'll do at the end of this video is I'll put this into SOS mode, and that's a flashing amber light to show you that there's no other way to restore this Mac other than to boot it into Dfu mode. It's kind of like letting you know, like, hey, we're not going to show you anything on the screen because we're in serious problems. The only way to do it is to plug this into our Apple Configurator 2 to restore. Okay, now we're in Dfu mode. We know that 11.1 is on here. So we can go 11.1 back on here by right-clicking on here and clicking on Restore. That will erase the drive and download the latest version of macOS that is available on Apple servers. So in the future, let's say 11.5 is out or 12.1 or whatever, that's what this option is going to do. The latest version, it'll download, erase this drive, and then reinstall the latest version. The Advanced Revive will just retain your data and then reinstall macOS Recovery. And that could be like if you hold on the power button to go into recovery and it doesn't boot or it gives you an error, this will retain your data, reinstall macOS Recovery. Those are the 2 options. Now keep in mind, both of these options, if you do them right now, will download the full installer from Apple servers, and that could take a long time, anywhere between 1 and 2 hours, depending on your download speed. So that takes a while. My recommendation is to always have the previous versions, and honestly, that's going to be the way that you need to be able to reinstall a previous version or downgrade anyway. And I've got my site here that I keep all the previous IPSW firmware files right here for you to be able to downgrade. So now that we know that 11.1 is on there, we need to go to 11.0.1. So all you need to do is click on this link, and if you're worried about the link security, right click on it. It's directly from Apple servers. You can see right down here, updates.contentdeliverynetwork, apple.com. That's straight from Apple servers. So if you click that, you're getting it right from Apple and you know it's safe. So if you click on this, it'll go right down to your downloads folder, but I've already got them downloaded here and I've got multiple different versions. I'm going to keep every single one for if we need to do testing in the future. All we need to do is go back to Apple Configurator 2 and find 11.0.1, and then it is right here, 20B29 11.0.1, drag it over to the window, let go, and we are brought to a new menu that gives us both options. Since we need the full IPSW to do the revive also, that's why it gives us the option, and we can click on restore. So we're going to click on restore because we want to erase the data and downgrade. So we'll click restore, and there it goes. If you were downloading, it would give you 3 steps. It would say downloading, step 1, and then step 2 is installing the system software. Step 2 was unpacking, and then step 3 was installing system software. Now we'll go to activity monitor here real quick, and we can actually click on disk and see how fast this is copying over. We're almost copying over at 700 megabytes a second. Super fast. And again, in about a second or two here, the screen's going to light up and have an Apple, and look at how quick it's going here. We'll see the screen come up here, and there it goes, and then we'll see a progress bar, and that's where it's actually installing macOS. And that's going to be probably anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes on the install here. And that's super quick. And notice how when it's installing, you'll see the LED flash orange to tell you that it's restoring the system. Now, remember what I told you I was going to do, right? That we were going to send this into Dfu Mode. Again, I would not try this at home, but I've tried this, and you can always restore using Apple Configurator 2, and I have all the files and everything I need to be able to do this. I do not recommend this, but we're doing this for science, right? So let's just say, for example, your cat ran across your table and disconnected us. Oh, shoot. The system cannot be restored on this device. The operation could not be completed. Failed to receive message from the device. Might be USB host. Now let's see what happens here. Look at this. Now we're in SOS mode. And look what we've got. Instead of our flashing folder, we've now got a circle and an exclamation point telling us that, guess what? macOS recovery is unavailable. System recovery is unavailable. And we can't even boot or load a USB flash drive installer because it's not even available. All versions of macOS recovery are dead. And if we go to this site, let's go to the site so you can kind of see what this would tell users to do. So we'll go to Apple or support, apple.com, Mac, and then restore. And it will give us instructions on what to do. As you can see here, it's got the exclamation point with a circle, and it tells you that in very rare circumstances, such as a power failure or, like we did, a forced interrupt, your Mac might start up to a circled exclamation point. That means the firmware restored on your computer needs to be revived or restored. You will need these items. And just as we talked about, you need at least a host computer with Mac OS Catalina 10.15.6 or later, internet access, and the latest version of Apple Configurator 2. You've got your USB charge cable, and we've got the instructions for restore and revive. So let's try that. Let's see what happens here. We'll minimize this. We'll go back to Apple Configurator 2 and notice the square. Let's try to plug this in and see if it's in Dfu Mode. It's probably not because we've got a screen, but let's just see what it says when we plug it back in here. I think it'll be a lock or a picture of the Mac. I can't remember what it was. And see if it actually changes here. And it's the picture of the Mac, just like I said. So there you go. And you can't do anything with this. Notice you'll click restore and we'll see what happens here. Okay, from here, we should be able to just click on it and drag it over because it's in a mode where we need to be able to restore the device. So we should be able to just right click on here and click on advanced to restore, and it should start that process here. And you can see this is the menu. You can click restore and it'll download like we talked about before, but we'll cancel and we'll drag that 11.1 back over to it, and we should get the restore option and get started again here. And there it goes, installing the system, and it should restore macOS back onto the system. And I wanted to show you this because, again, disasters can happen. But the good thing is that this system is pretty reliable. And again, even if we had a power interruption, we're still able to reinstall the system back onto an Apple Silicon Mac. So again, we've got multiple ways to reinstall macOS here. Now this is an error that we could get. Now let's look at this. The system cannot be restored on this device. Failed to restore device in recovery mode, error 21. Now, it's possible it's because we're in this weird mode here with the exclamation point. So what I'm gonna do is I'll click stop, and then we're gonna shut it down and put it into proper Dfu mode. This might not be a Dfu. It's kind of weird that it offered us the Dfu mode to be able to do that. But what we'll do is we'll power this down and we'll go through that whole process again. So we'll unplug. All right, we got Dfu Mode. Now it should work. So now we'll go back to our screen and we'll drag over the 11.0.1 over and we'll click restore. And this should work now. We'll wait and we'll make sure, we'll confirm that we get the Mac to come back to life on the screen, and they'll go. So again, this mode works really well for quick reinstalls. For institution like a business or a school, this is like the best way to be able to reinstall macOS and restore it back to factory settings. And I'm glad we went through that exercise to show that in that mode where it shows the picture, it doesn't work. We're not in proper Dfmu mode, and that's why we got that error. We need to get into Dfmu mode even though it's showing that we can restore it. Actually, it should give us an error. It should say that you can't restore unless you're in Dfmu mode, but obviously it didn't, and that's why we had to go through this whole process again. So this will install will be okay. So again, that's the whole process of reinstalling macOS onto your Apple Silicon Mac Mini using Apple Configurator 2, and we showed what would happen if you had a power interruption and a couple of different errors that you would get by doing this. And this is a good way to be able to downgrade in the future, and it's the only way that we can downgrade macOS on our Apple Silicon Mac. So again, this is a kind of a deep dive video of the whole process, but you now understand what you need to do if you want to be able to downgrade. And again, I hope this video was valuable to you. If you tried this process or you have a comment about this process, let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, click that subscribe button. And if you're a current subscriber, I really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks a lot.